At Thanksgiving, my sister learned I had $12 million, and my family insisted I hand it to her, saying she deserved it more. What if I told you I built a multi-million-dollar empire from scratch, entirely under my family's nose? Well, they thought I was barely scraping by. And then they found out. Trust me, Thanksgiving dinner got wild. My name is Sarah, I'm 38, and I finally need to get this off my chest. You know those family dynamics, right? Where one child can do no wrong, bathed in constant praise, while the other is practically invisible. Yeah, that was my life for as long as I can remember. Everything was pretty normal until I was 8. I was an only child, and while my parents weren't exactly hug and kiss types, they were present. Mom would help with homework. Dad would occasionally take me fishing. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then came the night that shattered everything. I remember my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m., telling me to pack a suitcase. Mom was in the hospital. My sister, Rachel, was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't due for another 2 months. The next few weeks were a blur of hushed conversations and hospital visits. Rachel was tiny, just like one of my baby dolls, but tangled in tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her or even get too close. That was the first time I felt it, an invisible wall forming between me and the rest of my family. When they finally brought Rachel home, our house transformed into a sterilized bubble. Mom became obsessed with germs. I'm talking industrial strength, disinfectant everywhere, hand sanitizer stations in every room, constant cleaning. The harsh smell of bleach still makes me anxious to this day. But here's what really messed me up. Anytime I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was whisked away. Sneeze once? Pack your bags for Grandma Marie's. A mild cough? You're off to Aunt Kelly's. At first, I actually enjoyed it. Grandma Marie made the best cookies, and Aunt Kelly had an incredible collection of Nancy Drew books. But kids aren't stupid. After a while, you start to understand what's really happening. You're not being sent on an adventure. You're being treated like a threat, as if your entire existence could somehow damage your beloved sister. I tried everything to get their attention in a healthier way. Honestly, everything. I got straight A's. Mom would barely look up from Rachel's latest doctor's appointment calendar. I won first prize at the science fair with a project on renewable energy. Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage because Rachel was allergic to cardboard dust. Is that even a thing? The real kick in the gut came when I was 12. For months, I'd been teaching myself to play bridge over troubled water on the piano for the school talent show. I know, a little dramatic, but it was my passion. The night of the show, Rachel had a 99.1-degree fever. Guess who had an empty audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, both sets of grandparents included, attended Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, where she essentially murdered hot cross buns. Rachel quickly learned how to work the system. By age 7, she'd outgrown any real health difficulties, but that didn't stop her. A headache. Stay home from school. Feeling tired. Guess who had to do her chores? Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get the deadline extended for her. I started spending more and more time in my room, lost in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life works out. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener, so it was the only place she would go. You know what? When she faked being sick, a part of me actually felt grateful. At least then I'd be taken to Grandma Marie's, where someone would ask about my day or be interested in what I was interested in. Grandma was the one who sparked my passion for vintage jewelry. She had this incredible collection of costume pieces she let me organize and catalog. I guess I should have seen that as prophetic. The worst part wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to excuse their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a child who couldn't comprehend why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. That persistent message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient doesn't just disappear. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. High school. Most people either loved it or loathed it. Me, I saw it as a ticket out. While Rachel was busy building her drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my own escape. And let me tell you, nothing inspires you to achieve more than knowing no one else is going to do it for you. Remember how I spent hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry? That taught me a valuable lesson. The need for systematic organization and meticulous attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with that mindset. My desk at home looked like something out of an organization magazine. Color-coded notes, perfectly planned study schedules, everything in its place. Rachel teased me about it, calling me Raymond. Very clever, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one is monitoring your failures or your successes. So, you can do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that wouldn't interfere with my part-time job at Carson's Diner. Thank you, Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents had forgotten. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Check. The debate team was where I truly found my voice. There's something incredibly satisfying about shattering someone's argument while maintaining complete composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, a skill I didn't realize at the time would be so incredibly useful later. I even won states, twice. Rachel had major soccer games, so my parents couldn't attend either competition. She was on the C team, didn't even play the game. Share. Junior year was when things got really interesting. I took the SATs and got a flawless score. Not, oh, pretty good, I mean perfect. 1600. Do you know how few people get that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was an error. I rushed home, bursting to tell my parents. This is so stupid, I know. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. Mom, look, I got a perfect SAT score. Mom, barely looking up. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel chimed in. Yeah, some of us actually have to study Miss Perfect. Mom just patted Rachel's hand. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SAT results somewhere. Never got pinned to the fridge. But Rachel's C+ in English? That infant received primo refrigerator. Real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. College applications. That whole process was enlightening. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone. I wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, and handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chen, was the true MVP. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I just stayed late after school. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, and each one came with a scholarship offer. I stored them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing exactly what would happen if Rachel discovered them. Their focus would instantly shift entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone, or some nonsense like that. The day I received my full ride offer from Mitch, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family feast? Hint. I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, lodging, board, all included. Even a book allowance. I could finally leave that house where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I received that acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and I cried for an hour. Not sad tears. These were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. When I told my parents at supper that I was going to UMich, they were not ecstatic. Michigan? But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? Mom said, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly, Dad added. Rachel, oh my God, started crying. Finally! Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. The summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner, saving every penny. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie. She also taught me a vital skill, how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. Baby, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at UMich. My folks couldn't make it because, surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and handed me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. I later learned Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night, alone in my dorm room, I made myself a promise. I was going to build a life so wonderful, so undeniably mine, that being overlooked would be inconceivable. Not for vengeance, not to prove anything to my family, but for that 8-year-old girl who used to get sent away for sneezing. College flew by in a blur of all-nighters, instant ramen, and glorious independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that my folks noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuine, high-end establishment. Old money clients, high-stakes transactions. I started in their estate sales division, documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were pretty standard, logging countless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, that sort of thing. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who had died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a massive collection of costume jewelry, rooms filled with the stuff. This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's came in handy. I was sifting through this pile when something caught my eye. It was an Art Deco brooch. Nothing flashy, but something about it just felt different. The weight was all wrong for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was far too intricate for a cheap copy. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching old jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late, using the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I became. This wasn't costume jewelry. This was the real deal. The problem? I was the new girl. No one would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. I spent 2 weeks, during lunch breaks and evenings, learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pitiful savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally, I mustered the guts to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the whole presentation. Comparative images, historical documentation, the works. The conversation went something like this. Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison, barely looking up from his phone. Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. You're mistaken. Me. I know, but look at these makers' marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison, finally paying attention. Where did you learn all of this? Me. I did some research. Long story short, that costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. Turns out, it was part of a limited collection created for some European royalty in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me after that. He began giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless pastime of sorting antique jewels acquired real significance. I devoted myself to learning everything I could. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales, researching items. I even started a small notebook to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream. Walls covered with printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started getting results. I was discovering important items others had overlooked, developing contacts with collectors, and understanding the market. My commission checks became larger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was saving money. And my family? Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to like a fool, the discourse went like this. Mom, Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? Me. Auction house, actually. And yes, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Rachel interrupting. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something wholly mine. Something I was actually excellent at. Something completely unrelated to being Rachel's sister. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my employment at the auction house. A massive estate, old money family. There was a huge buzz in the industry. I was part of the team cataloging their jewelry, and that's when I saw it. A fairly commonplace Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days investigating it, barely sleeping. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, believed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison summoned me to his office. I thought I was being promoted. Instead, he said something that completely changed everything. Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. Initially, I shrugged it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the notion took root. I started doing modest freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread that I had a terrific eye. Private collectors began contacting me directly. One night, I was sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools I'd gradually accumulated, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could build something on my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a hefty loan against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less than desirable area of town. People thought I was insane. Perhaps I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant, about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat by the window in the corner. But it was mine. The first few months were interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. in cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a rope around my neck. My office furnishings consisted of a card table I bought from Goodwill and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything. My experience at the auction house gave me both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the larger organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment occurred. A dealer I had worked with at the auction house asked me about a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner needed confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection, pieces from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misinterpreted as later replicas. The owner was so delighted with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but also offered me a 10% commission when the pieces sold. That commission? $86,000. More money than I had earned in the preceding 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone rang a lot. Private collectors heard about my knack for finding missed pieces. Estate lawyers sought advice on inherited jewelry. Even my previous auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the news. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me a little too much of myself at that age. She was brilliant but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and is worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded quicker than I could have predicted. We moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken odor, and built a team of specialists. I earned a reputation for finding those hidden gems. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry items get misinterpreted as costume jewelry in people's attics. Keeping it secret from my family, however, came with its own set of obstacles. The bigger we became, the harder it was to keep it from them. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel would make these snide remarks during family dinners. Rachel, Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it. Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Faberge item that morning. Sure, I'll take a look. Mom would continue to introduce me to everyone. This is my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I was being quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had just opened our 3rd office. What's strange is, keeping the secret became almost enjoyable. Like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target discount outfit. Really Chanel. Listening to Rachel talk about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing if anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her entire car. The real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out a lot of wealthy people want their jewels verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was incredible. We needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Yet, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a nice, but not flashy, house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not ostentatious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office, advanced authentication. Equipment, the most effective security system money can buy, and a custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox envious. What's with the irony? They believed I was being frugal by aiding them. Mom would remark, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection which earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to others who have always perceived you as inferior. It's like explaining color to someone who has only ever seen black and white. They lack the necessary context. But by this stage, my company was absolutely flourishing. We had cornered the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. Yet, every Sunday, I'd travel to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast, while Rachel dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss coffee without spilling it. One Sunday is seared into my mind. I had just completed a huge transaction, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been resting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission alone? 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' place, still euphoric from the successful authentication. Mom, noticing my attire, "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to save money," I said, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel chimed in, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." Dad cut her off. "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my pot roast, trying desperately not to laugh. Around this time, anonymous payments to my parents began. Aunt Kelly had confided in me that they were struggling to pay Rachel's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was giving $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They imagined the rest came from Aunt Kelly or some other family member. Rachel, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. The money was helpful, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with a strange combination of pity and patronizing pride, as if I were some noble poverty case sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd arrive for dinner with new, expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can recognize a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She began taking extravagant vacations, bragging on Instagram about her blessed life. I'm pretty convinced she used my support money for shopping sprees. Yet I remained silent. The irony was just too delicious. Then came the MBA drama. Rachel announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, explaining how they couldn't possibly afford it. I suggested maybe Rachel could look at state schools. They have good programs too. My mother's response: "Oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards." Then, almost as an afterthought, "But speaking of assisting, could I increase my monthly contribution for a few years?" I increased it to $7,000 a month. My accounts were unaffected, but watching them compliment Rachel for taking initiative with her education, while presuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The actual kicker? I was giving a guest lecture at the very same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family, of course, had no idea. The dean personally invited me to speak on luxury goods authentication and business growth. I had to come up with an excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievements started to feel like a separate life, as if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, the disappointed daughter who worked at an antique shop. The weight of the untruth was becoming heavier. Rachel made snide remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time, Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time, Dad suggested I get a real job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, weeping about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the notion of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd love to tell you that I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but honestly, I was just tired of pretending her dried turkey was appetizing. My response: "Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered." She replied, "Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer." Me: "Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up." Mom, concerned: "You're not taking out a loan, are you?" I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to cook yourself. It cost more than my folks' Probably thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was up for sale, and I had a client interested in authentication if they won the bid. The lunch arrived right on schedule, and everything was perfectly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to respond. Rachel, store-bought stuffing really, Sarah? Mom's is so much better. This is from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm trying to make toast. Mom was busy apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were all enjoying the meal. Rachel even shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from supper and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intense, and I needed to be ready in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running, with multiple tabs open displaying various accounts and current agreements. Rachel walked in without knocking. Some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen, and I could practically see the gears turning. This was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking, let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. Picture this. 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, all stuffed with gourmet turkey and half-drunk on expensive wine they thought was Trader Joe's. Rachel, triumphantly, flipped the laptop around, clearly intending to humiliate me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went utterly silent. You could hear the fancy clock I'd gotten Mom for Christmas ticking. She believed it was a reproduction. My screen displayed current account balance, $12.4 million pending authentication contract, $485,000 recent transaction, $1.2 million company's quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face shifted through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between pure astonishment and actual nausea. She swayed slightly on her feet. Rachel, whispering, This can't be right. Mom, confused. Rachel, honey, what is it? Rachel, voice cracking. She's rich. Sarah's rich. Chaos ensued. If it was possible, the hush deepened even further. Then Mom started giggling, like really laughing. Don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop. I stood up, carefully straightening my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. Yes, actually, Mom, I said, my voice calm, almost dangerously so. I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his wine. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle began coughing terribly. Then Mom's laughter transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up, so quickly her chair toppled over. Mom screamed, You have millions and you let us struggle. My response, struggle? I send you $7,000 every month. She shrieked back, while sitting on millions. Your sister has student loans. So there it was. Instead of congratulations, not, wow, we're so proud, just outrage that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel started to cry, shocking, I know, sobbing about how she deserved to know, and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. That's when I finally lost it. Years of being disregarded. Years of dismissal. Years of being labeled a family disappointment. Everything poured forth. Raised me. You shipped me off to Grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college, but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself. The next 5 minutes were absolute chaos. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad yelled about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team tried to serve dessert, looking exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom already discussing how to spend my money. Something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW, by the way, my phone started blowing up with texts. The family group, Chat exploded. Rachel began posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion. Except the hurricane was my family and the debris was my sanity. Let's start with the texts. Within an hour of leaving supper, my phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's progression was particularly intriguing. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Rachel, on the other hand, had fully embraced social media warfare. She wrote an enormous rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But here's what really got me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal in that stung so much, I nearly threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she ever gave me was suggesting I try selling jewelry on Etsy. If you're unfamiliar with the term, flying monkeys are when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she get my number? Felt compelled to express her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they showed up at my workplace. I arrived Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They'd told Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authenticating services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. Mom, we've discussed it as a family. Me, a family discussion without the family member you're discussing? Mom, ignoring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel, I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Me, did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Rachel, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. I was just thinking I owe you. For what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mom, dramatically. Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything. Me, no. I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there, in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel started her phony crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things became ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out, yelling about ungrateful children, was bizarre. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses. They even tried to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice, threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She is wiser than all of them put together. How did she respond? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak with her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I relocated to a new home with better security. I changed all of my numbers. And the company? We're doing better than ever. It turns out my family drama actually attracted several high-profile clients who respected my caution in the circumstances. Rachel still writes passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I've heard, she's starting her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now informing everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and that they're praying for my salvation. What's the best part? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their feelings. No longer financing the Rachel show. My therapist believes I am finally establishing healthy limits. I say I am finally living authentically. So that's my story. What do you think? Have you ever had to draw a line with family? I really want to hear your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Oh, and one last thing to Rachel. I know you're probably reading this. That Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake. Just saying.